Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are in the Boxwood Garden because while it is January and it is a sunny day out, it is blustery and cold in the wind. So we are using these boxwood as a nice little screen to get us comfortable. Today we've got our director, Mark Wethington, here, who's going to be giving you a program. New year, new plant obsessions. It is 2024, and we are looking ahead at the future of plants. We want to see what we are excited about here at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, what is happening in the world of plants, and it will be a beautiful program. Those of you watching this on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave any comments down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I think we can pass things over to Mark to tell us about his new plant obsessions for 2024.
All right, this was fun. New plant obsessions. I poked around through the greenhouses and got to decide what to take because, and at first I was thinking, new plants, new year, new obsessions. I was like, I don't know that there's anything, really new that I've been, really getting excited about, new groups of plants, things like that. And I started walking around in the nurseries and realized, wow, there's a bunch of stuff that I've been bringing in over the last year or two that we've been bulking up in the nursery and getting ready to get out and get into people's hands, and in some cases trial even in the garden, things we haven't really tried yet. That has me a little more excited than perhaps I had realized. So I'm going to jump right in, talk about some plants. Some of these I'm not going to know a whole lot about because they're new to me as well. You feel free to type in your questions and we'll answer them either at the end or as we go along. So I'm going to start with a group that I've been really excited about recently. A group of plants that I didn't actually think we could grow outside for the most part. And these are Gesneriads. They're in the family Gesneriaceae. That sounds like a lot, but you're probably familiar with some plants in that family. Think African violets, Gloxinia, some of those hanging baskets that we call lipstick plants or goldfish plants. Now you got to be careful with common names because lots of things are called lipstick plant and not all of them are Gesneriads. Outdoors, we haven't grown many of them other than some Sinningias and Semanias that we've found to be hardy for us. But most of the rest of them we think of as real tropical plants. And at some point in the last half decade or so, I realized as I was out collecting plants in Asia and places, I'm collecting from a tree and there's a cliff face behind me with Gesneriads growing on it that I have been ignoring for years and years because I say Gesneriads not hardy outside, but I'm collecting all these other hardy plants around them. So we started looking at more and more of these. We've been collecting some and getting them from all kinds of different places to evaluate. So I'll start with this little guy. This is Aschinanthus buxifolius. Don't ask me for a common name, maybe boxleaf Aschinanthus. Buxifolius means boxleaf, which means boxwood-like leaf, and you can see that. In the wild, this is a little epiphyte or lithophyte, grows on tree branches or grows on rocks, that kind of thing. We find it grows just fine in garden soil. I like it a little bit on a slope, if I can put it like that, or by a rock. I find some of these plants grow better by rock. But it has the most intense, deep red flowers, kind of in that lipstick or goldfish plant form. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, question always is, how hardy is it? And the answer is, I don't know. But several of these were out all winter last winter for me. It wasn't the coldest winter, but it did get pretty chilly. So it at least has the potential to be hardy. Now, we've gotten different forms from different people, and some of them have been more hardy than others. The ones with the smaller leaves like this are the ones that have been have shown some hardiness, maybe zone 8 hardiness. The larger leaf ones, they were not hardy at all. I think they were actually misidentified probably, but at any rate, some potential hardiness here. So we're really liking this. And even if you wanted to grow this as a house plant or in a hanging basket, something like that, it would be great that way. This other Gesneriad, you can see very different looking. There's a lot of different forms of this. This is a Raphiocarpus. We think the species is Petalladii, Raphiocarpus petalladii, but we're not 100% sure on that. If you see any kind of labels or things that say AF in there, this is a little taxonomy for you. We have this Raphiocarpus AF petalladii. The AF just means we don't really know if for sure. It has an affinity to that. So this can be an epiphyte, but grows more in the ground. That's where we've seen it. This is one we collected in Vietnam in 2022, where the former one had a real glossy small leaf. This has a real fuzzy leaf, deeply impressed veins, and this real purple backside to the leaf. It flowered for us this year with big, almost 1 inch, pale yellow with pale purple veined flowers. The flowers were held a little bit under the leaves, so it wasn't as showy as it could be. I'm trying to see if there are any flower buds in here. They're not. That's all new growth. Is this going to be hardy? Again, it's hard to say. It was collected at high elevations in Vietnam. I think with a lot of these things, it's a lot about where you get it in the garden. Now, we think Vietnam, we think tropical or subtropical. We're up in a subtropical to temperate zone where we collected this. Lots of rain, lots of moisture. So you think this wants a lot of moisture. The truth is, it likes moisture, but it likes drainage as well. So again, on a slope, by a stone, in a woodland rockery type area, that's where this is gonna really stand the most chance. Check back in 2 years. I may be over my Gesneriad phase because I might have killed almost all of them. Although I do have some in my garden that I've had for years, some Briggsea and some Orthosiphon and some Ramonda, which are all three of those are little rosette forming Gesneriads. So they form little rosettes. But we've had some for 8 or 10 years here at the Arboretum. All right. Go from a herbaceous plant to a group of woody plants. I kind of did these in groups as much as anything else when I was doing that. You may be surprised to find that I am in a barberry phase. Barberries get a lot of bad press. There's some that are weedy. There's an awful lot that are ugly. And I'm speaking to you, all you little dwarf purple leaf and yellow leaf little things, or the god-awful orange leaved ones. I cannot stand those things. And those are the ones that we're having issues with seeding around because they're being planted in the gajillions out there. But there are a lot of other barberries. There are so many barberry species, and they're beautiful plants. They are gorgeous. This is one, Berberis morrisanicola. Morrisanicola. Morrisanicola refers to Mount Morrison in Taiwan, which now we call Alishan. We've stopped using a lot of these Western names and gone back to their proper place names based on the people who actually lived near them. So Alishan or Mount Morrison. So this is one. This is another. This is Berberis subsessiliflora. Subsessiliflora. So sessile refers to being attached directly to the stem. So sometimes that refers to the leaves. These are not sessile. It can also refer to the flowers. I'm imagining that's what it refers to on here. Sub means it's less than sessile, and I don't know how you get less than attached right to the stem, but hey, what can you do? And then this is Berberis wallichiana. Wallich did a lot of work in the Himalayas and Arunachal Pradesh area. So that's where kind of this is going to be from. Subsessiliflora from China. And I kind of talk about all these together because I can really generalize about barberries, the species barberries that are out there. They can be deciduous or evergreen, and Morrisonicola and Wallichiana are both evergreen. Subsessiliflora is a little semi-evergreen or tardily deciduous or whatever. And you can see on the subsessiliflora, we're getting some fall color. And so it's a plant that'll get some fall color and hang on to that fall color for quite a while during the winter before it really starts to fall off, and new leaves will be coming out as the old leaves fall. Mostly all barberries, and certainly all three of these, have gold flowers. They can be held individually, they can be held in small clusters, they can be held in big, long racemes, which are absolutely gorgeous things, followed by either black or more rarely red fruits. They're tough as nails. They are spiny, and a lot of times people hear me say I don't like spiny plants. They do have thorns on them. They do often have kind of spiny leaves. Yeah, I don't love that in my plants, but because these make these generally pretty large arching shrubs, birds love to nest in them. They love those little thorny plants. The snakes and other critters don't like to get in there quite so much. They're really just cool plants. I could have brought up about a dozen or more seedlings of different barberries that we've been bringing in, because it really has been a recent thing where I've said, these are gorgeous plants. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm sick of Berberis thunbergii that everybody grows, but there's a lot of other ones out there that are beautiful, beautiful flowering shrubs. So we've been getting them in, and to evaluate them, to reevaluate them. We've grown lots of species over the years, but we had moved away, but now we're getting some entirely new species to us here to evaluate. To another larger group that I'm super, super excited about. And I'll shuffle these around, but these are all hollies. What do they have in common? They're not spiny-leaved hollies. They are entire-leaved hollies. So they have, they may have, this one has a little tipped spine, but for the most part, they don't have those spiny leaf edges. And we've grown plenty of these types in our landscapes. The Japanese hollies, Ilex crenata, are one of the most ubiquitous southeastern landscape plants. There's little green mounds with inconspicuous flowers and inconspicuous black fruits. Just what we need in a holly is something that has no other feature than being a little evergreen blob, which we use to take the place of boxwoods, which are evergreen blobs. And so, I don't know why, but we also have native hollies, which are non-spiny, entire-leafed ones, like our Yaupon holly, Ilex vomitoria, and some of its close relatives like Mersini and Ambigua, and some of those. But these all happen to be Asian ones. And perhaps where I really started kind of falling in love with them was this little guy. This is Ilex sugarokii. This particular one is variety Longipedunculata. Peduncle is the stem that the fruit hangs on, and I fell in love with Ilex sugarokii variety Brevipedunculata, which has a short fruit stalk. I saw it first in Taiwan as this beautiful, tight evergreen shrub loaded with these red fruits. Just absolutely beautiful plant. Kind of mid-sized green leaves, larger than boxwoods and the Japanese holly, but still pretty small. I've acquired this, the Arboretum acquired this Longipedunculata from Japan, from Yamaguchi-san, one of the great plantsmen in Japan. And I just think it's the neatest little thing out there. And so that kind of led me on towards more and more and more of these hollies. One that I've grown for a long time, but just reacquired recently from another garden, is Ilex dimorphophylla. Ilex dimorphophylla. Dimorph means it has more than one form, phylla, leaf. And so when this is young, especially as a seedling, and this is a cutting, but as a seedling, you'll get often kind of 3 spines on the tip of the leaf, but as it matures, it'll lose that and go to 1 leaf. Makes a beautiful upright shrub, loaded with small ripe red fruit, bright red fruits. Really just an absolutely spectacular plant. And with these small leaves on that larger size, it really gives you a different texture than, our Mary Nell hollies and the American hollies and these other ones that we use really often. I just think it's a cool plant. Now, kind of in the same mold is this one. Now, this is one that is, we don't have a species named to it yet. We're still trying to identify it. And this actually came as a cutting from our sister garden here in the area, Sarah P. Duke Gardens. It was a plant that Paul Jones had collected in China, in Jiangxi province years ago. We just have it as Jiangxi small leaf. It looks a little bit like Ilex triflora, which I saw in the same region not terribly long back, and it may be that Ilex triflora. And I was there with a plant breeder, and he looked at the Ilex triflora, and I don't know if you can get in there and see that, but that leaf looks very much like a boxwood. And his immediate reaction was, "Oh, this could be a boxwood replacement," because, boxwood blight and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I suppose it could. Although at least this has red berries. Well, I take it back. Ilex triflora has red berries. I'm not certain about this one yet. We'll have to wait and see. But hopefully we'll be able to key it out. On that same trip where I saw Ilex triflora, and this is where I really started getting into these. We visited an area kind of in Jiangxi in part, but also a little north of Jiangxi, where we found just a bunch of species of these non-spiny evergreen hollies. This is one that is Ilex. I just handed it to you. Is it Championii? Championii, which is great. This will lead into another plant. It's a great segue. So Ilex championii has these non-spiny but kind of serrate leaves, makes upright. But the trees we saw were relatively narrow, really beautiful thing. But we saw fig-leaf ficus, Ilex ficoidea, that looked just like a weeping fig that you'd grow as a house plant. Several that we haven't yet identified, but they were all over the place. And really, I really fell in love with these there. They're I don't know why so uncommon. We've got one more, and this is another one that we got from Duke Gardens. This is Ilex suavolens. And this is, I just brought this out because this is one of the thinner leafed ones. And what I find with these that have this longer, kind of thinner leaf is some of them will be evergreen in warmer climates, but then deciduous as we go farther north, as it gets colder. But this has been growing just fine here in Durham for probably decades now. So I'm really excited about this. It kind of took a funky color on this winter. I don't know if that's typical. It's been in a greenhouse, which can sometimes do weird things, but this is certainly I think a pretty plant there, and they've got a wonderful Asian plant collection if you go visit them. All right. Do I need to stop for any questions, Blake, or are you getting through them all?
We can do questions at the end.
Okay. So, you might have been enjoying this plant if you joined us early. This is Rhodalea. Rhodalea. This particular one is Henryi, and it's the cultivar Takashitaceae. Thank you. Takashitaceae. Rhodalea Henryi was a plant that I first learned maybe 15, 16 years ago. I take it back. It was longer now. It was closer to 20 years. But all I knew of it was as this evergreen plant with these, beautiful evergreen elliptic leaves that was marginally hardy. About 15, 16 years ago, I saw it in flower. And holy cow, it blew my mind. I had no idea. This is a member, believe it or not, of the witch hazel families. I think of Hamamelis flowers, completely different, but still a member of that family. This is a flower that's not yet opened. It will open wider, but hang down, look kind of like a frilly skirt. We've been growing these for quite a while and find them to be quite cold hardy for us. However, they form these flower buds in the fall, and they're hanging out there, out in the open, just sitting there. And when it gets cold, they freeze. So more years than not, we don't get good flowers on our plants in the garden. It's unfortunate for us, but we're trying to find hardier ones. So we've grown them. They're great. I was visiting another botanic garden, the South China Botanic Garden, which is deep south tropical botanic garden, incredible collection. And they had a bunch of Rhodalea championii, which I say would go back toward that Ilex championii. Rhodalea championii should be less hardier than Rhodalea henryi. But we collected seed. It was in full seed. We collected seed with their permission, got it inspected, brought back. And what was interesting, seeing the plants, every Rhodalea henryi we've grown has been a shrubby plant. Think more like a camellia than anything else. The Rhodalea championii were all single trunk trees growing straight up, maybe 20 feet tall. And I can just imagine that loaded with these pink flowers. Well, we grew a bunch out, and it so happened we had a cold winter. Our Rhodalea henryi in our protected lath house took a lot of leaf damage. We had a Vietnamese Rhodalea parvilimba. It completely died. It was in a protected spot near our visitor center. Right near that parvilimba, in a protected spot, we had Rhodalea championii, one of these seedlings. And it had the least damage of all of them, even though it should have been terribly, terribly tender. Since then, it's kept growing. It's flowered for us. Got very similar big pink flower on it. We've kind of pulled out and selected the one that we found to be the most cold hardy one that we've had. We haven't had a cold winter, and we haven't shared it widely yet. So we're not making any promises, but it looks to be a solid, certainly zone 8, probably 7B at least. We have named that one. We call it Winter Champion, because, we like to confuse people. So just a tongue twister, Rhodalea championii, Winter Champion, we like that. So we're pretty excited about that and have just started propagating it. Here's something you don't think about. When you have a nice bushy plant like Rhodalea henryi, lots of places to take cuttings on it. When you've got a single stem plant that isn't really widely branched, you have many fewer spots to take cuttings on, so it takes longer for us to build up those numbers. All right, where do we go from there? All right, kind of a return to a plant, a group that I have loved for a long time that for some reason has regained my my appreciation. I don't know where you get the best view. And that is the group that we most commonly know, the species that we call Jerusalem sage. This is Phlomis. Phlomis fruticosa that we call Jerusalem sage looks like a shrubby lamb's ear plant. It's got silver fuzzy foliage that looks just as tender as can be, but is perfectly cold hardy for us. And then it gets these intense gold yellow flowers and whorls around the stem. And there are a lot of Phlomis out there, but Phlomis fruticosa, sometimes Phlomis grandifolia or flora is another one you can find. But there are all these species, and they're all native to kind of the Mediterranean region around there. So you see them a lot in Portugal and Spain and southern France and North Africa, Iran, really all around the Mediterranean. And they make these mostly with Phlomis woody stemmed plants with kind of soft fuzzy leaves, and then whorls of usually gold flowers. Sometimes there are some purple ones, and there's some herbaceous kind of ones that move back and forth between Phlomis and Phlomoides, depending on your botanist of choice. But whereas some have very silvery, fuzzy leaves, some have leaves with gold hairs on them that really give this, when the sun hits them, they give this shimmering gold look. Some of them are just kind of a soft green. This one, Lycia, when it grows out, it has more of a gold tint to it, but there's Phlomis aurea and Chrysophylla, I believe, which both have really much more gold leaves. There's some selections like Whirling Dervish, which has very rippled leaves. We have managed to kill that in our nursery. As you may imagine, with Mediterranean plants and these fuzzy leaves, they don't like too much water. So they want to be in a well-drained spot. But unlike a lot of other plants with these fuzzy leaves, they seem okay, at least the ones we've grown, with our humidity. They tolerate our humidity. They just don't want to sit in wet soils. So if you plant them with some drainage, and it doesn't have to be extreme drainage, like a rock garden or gravel garden, I grow them in typical garden soil, and they flourish in that. If you put them in rich soil like I have, what I find is they don't flower. They grow very well, but they are very shy to flower. So they are better in a leaner soil. Keep that in mind. But I love these Phlomis, and we're getting a bunch of those in. Truth is, we've got a bunch in the nursery in little pots, and they look terrible as little tiny plants. I didn't want to bring them out here and poison you against it. All right, now this is probably, I shouldn't say a new love of mine, a new obsession of mine, but it is one that I've decided I'm going to reinvigorate this year. And these, you probably can recognize that. Probably most of you know that as a rhododendron. Well, I love rhododendron. And people tell me you can't grow them here. I say, well, you can. And I'm talking about the evergreen broadleaf rhododendrons. And people say, well, you can't really grow them here. You can. Marilyn, if you're out there listening, yes, the deer eat them. I'd like to find rhododendron that the deer don't eat. I have not. One of the groups of rhododendrons that do really well for us are the ones that are called the yaks, the Yakushimanum rhododendrons, or really now Rhododendron degronyanum subspecies or variety Yakushimanum. And I grow a lot of these at my house in my woodland. But more and more of these are being used in crosses with other species. This is being crossed with a Taiwan species, or excuse me, a Sichuan species called Crinigerum. So it's Rhododendron degronyanum, subspecies Yakushimanum, crossed with Rhododendron crinigerum. The wild type of rhododendron has big clusters of white flowers. Crinigerum has big clusters of pale pink flowers. But both tend to have fuzzy indumentum on the bottoms of the leaves, and when they emerge, even on the tops of the leaves, which you can maybe see here. See kind of almost like dust on the top. Those are actually hairs that I can wipe off. So both of these grow in an area which should be good for us. The area of Sichuan where the one species Crinigerum grows should be amenable to our culture. Certainly the yaks are. Again, like all rhododendron, they don't want wet feet. They want to be planted up high. They want to be planted on a slope. They want to be planted in a woodland near trees. They want to be protected from deer. I'm actually starting to protect some of my rhodies from deer. So what's going on in my head with these broadleaf rhododendron is we've been told in the South we can't grow them. They grow them great out west. And we go out there and say, oh, well, maybe we can grow them. Let me try some. And we get the ones that are really distinctive, especially in foliage, like the ones with the great big leaves like Falconeri, or we get the ones with really neat looking foliage like Orbiculare or Edgeworthii, or some of these things that are really distinct. And we try and grow those, and they don't grow, and we say, we can't grow them. And we'll go to the garden center and we'll get one of the few broadleaf rhododendron that they have there. And it'll be one called something like Nova Zembla, which if you know your geography, Nova Zembla is an island north of Russia. It is in the Arctic Circle. It was bred for great cold tolerance. Now, it'll limp along in the south until it gets really hot and humid and there's a little too much rain, and then it's gone. And so we get a lot of these rhododendron that are just not good for this area. Luckily, there's some breeding. The Southgate series from Southern Living has rhododendron Morii in it, which is a Taiwan rhododendron that grows well for us. But there are all these other species like Crinigerum and other ones that we've just not tried on the East Coast. And it really goes back, almost 50 years now to when JC came here to North Carolina. He was told that conifers don't grow in the South. And so he said, well, let's get a bunch of conifers and stick them in the ground. And, a lot of them don't grow well in the South, but a lot of them do. And so that's where I'm now is let's go back to the species, get a bunch of these species, plant them out, kill a bunch of them, but figure out what's good. And then we can use those for more breeding. So we can do more of these Southgate series with the Morii, and we're growing Formosanum that's growing well. And, we're growing these other rhododendrons. So that's what I want to do. That's what's really reinvigorated me. And this is just another one. This is one we collected in Vietnam last year, 2022, fall of 2022. Pretty good as a seedling. It's growing very, very quick. don't know what this rhododendron is. It was identified as rhododendron micranthum when we were in Vietnam. It is not micranthum, and I don't know what it is. It actually is looking very different from the rhododendron we collected it on. So we're trying to figure out, did we somehow get a name mixed up? Because micranthum has small leaves and is very different. So we're unsure about this, but all of the species are all growing out the same. And this is just another example of that. Is this going to be cold hardy? That's the question. High elevation Vietnam, but still might be iffy, but it'll certainly tolerate heat and humidity and all of that for us with no problem. So once it flowers, we'll be able to identify it. Oh, let's see. Real quick with this one. I'll finish out. I'll go do the last of the woodies, and then I'll go to a couple of herbaceous things. Started with herbaceous plants. I'll go back to them. Now, this plant looks a lot like some of those hollies that I had out here, but this is actually a Styrax relative, a snowbell relative. So, if you know Styrax japonicus, the snowbell, one of our signature collections here. We have quite a few of them. One of our most important commercially introductions ever was Styrax japonicus Emerald Pagoda that J.C. Ralston collected on Sehuksan Island in Korea. Most of the hardy Styrax and Styrax relatives, including our native Styrax grandifolius and our close relatives Halesia that we have native to the U.S. and North Carolina, almost all of them are deciduous. Huadendron is basically an evergreen Styrax, an evergreen snowbell. And I've tried to grow a lot of Huadendron. And I have killed a lot of Huadendron. They just don't seem to be quite hardy often. I've been having some luck with some that I have now, but that's because we haven't had a really cold winter. But I mentioned the great collection at Duke Gardens. They have a Huadendron that's been growing there for, I'm not sure how long. It's been growing there for more than 15 years. I can say that for assurance. And hasn't had any problems. Now, it's hard to find the plant because there's a lot of stuff that's grown up around it. And when not in flower, the best identification feature on a mature Huadendron is the bark. It has just drop-dead, drool-worthy, smooth, copper, not quite coppery, darker than copper, but this smooth, dark bark that'll flake off a bit, but it's not like a copper bark birch or a paper bark maple that it might sound like what I'm saying, or one of the copper bark cherries. It is its own thing, and I can vouch for that. It grows in Southeast China and into Vietnam. And in 2022, we were hiking up a mountain in Vietnam, and it was very steep, and I was panting and whatever, and looked up, and I could just see the bark of a tree. And I was like, that's the first Huadendron I've ever seen in the wild, and I know that's what it is. Did not have seed, so I did not get any of it. But we're, Duke Gardens, like I said, they're such great partners with us. They're fantastic. If you're ever in Central North Carolina, go visit Sarah Pete Duke Gardens, whether, no matter what you think of the Duke Blue Devils basketball team, go visit Duke Gardens. Excuse me. And one of the differences between us is they are really more of a display garden, and they're gorgeous. And, one of the things we always talk about is getting plants out. So there they have this beautiful, cold, hardy Huadendron that's been growing there for years. And, we finally said, hey, we got to go get cuttings of this so that we can grow it and take more cuttings and distribute this to people and get this out, this cold, hardy Huadendron. We probably will work with them on a cultivar name for it. Maybe they want it as, Green Duke or something like that. I don't know. But because it deserves a name, because it is genetically, it's different than what else we've been able to find in cultivation. So really excited about this. I didn't mention the flowers, but they're the little dangly white flowers on the plant. Gorgeous plant. Love that thing.
Chef recommends.
Chef recommends, exactly. We have sold it before, not this selection. We have sold it before, and I will say that the ones we have sold, those are the ones that have been that I've kept alive longer than any others so far. So we did sell pretty good for them, but this one is for sure better than this. Okay. Everybody know what this is by looking at the flower? You should know at least the family. This is an orchid. This is a Cymbidium orchid. There are a lot of different Cymbidium, some of what you go in, the greenhouse part of your garden center, and they have the beautiful oncidiums and dendrobiums. They will often have Cymbidiums, but they typically don't have this kind. This is a type that is grown widely as what's called a Koten Inge plant in a pot culture in Japan, the Cymbidiums, and it's also widely grown in China. It is one of the sacred plants. They often depict the different seasons with specific plants. And Cymbidium is often a symbol, one of those symbols they use. So, why am I getting excited about this orchid? Well, the types of Cymbidiums that we've been collecting and growing so far, mostly in the nursery, are terrestrial Cymbidiums. Many of them are epiphytes. They grow up in the trees and whatnot. So these are a little easier for us to grow because they're in the ground. Is it hardy? Well, which one is this? This is Cymbidium sinense Fugui Jinlong. We don't know. Likely not. Cymbidium goringii are, we have more luck with those being hardy. That's a species I've grown for many years, just the straight species. Similar flower, but the stalks are generally shorter and they're more green striped with white. So they kind of merge into the leaves unless you're really looking for them, which I'm okay with. I like to have to get in and look at my plants. But there's all these others that have been grown for container culture for this Koten Inge. We have variegated ones. We have ones with bright orange flowers. We have ones with yellow flowers, bicolors, all kinds of different things. And we've got the ones we're growing and are going to be trialing outside are the Cymbidium sinense, like this. I only know of one hardy form at this point called Early Riser. Cymbidium goringii, which the straight species is pretty darn hardy. Cymbidium fabri, Cymbidium torticipilum, and Cymbidium encephalium. So we have a lot of sinense, quite a few goringii, a handful of some of the other ones. And as they get to be of decent size, we're going to start planting them out and seeing how they'll do tucked into different spots. And we'll probably plant them in different areas. We'll plant them in our lath house. We'll plant them in a more open shade area. We'll plant them at the base of trees. We'll plant them, and hopefully they'll flower for us, typically in the spring, not in early spring, not quite this early. But one of the great things about it, and I've been telling everybody, oh my gosh, it has got a heavenly fragrance. And we had just this one, the two of this same selection were the only two in flower in our hoop house when I picked this one out. But that filled the entire hoop house, just these two plants. Did you smell it when you brought it over? I'm passing it over to Blake. He's got to do the smell test on it. And we're out in the cold. And so, generally fragrance is not as great out in the cold. So
No kidding, but that's nice.
And that's a nice
yeah.
fragrance. What do we have here? Putting these together, these are not the same genus. They are different genera, but they're very closely related, and they can kind of merge into one another when you watch them. So we all know Ophiopogon, the little grass-like plant. Think so, kind of like liriape. But does it have a common name?
Mondo grass.
Oh, mondo grass. That's it. Couldn't come up with it. Mondo grass. Dwarf mondo grass, gold mondo grass, black mondo grass. So there are a few species in cultivation, mostly mixed up, but Ophiopogon, they're all generally called Ophiopogon japonicus, but there's intermedia and some other ones. But recently, there's been a few more coming into cultivation. There's one that's called Sparkler, cultivar Sparkler, that was listed as Ophiopogon chingii Sparkler. Wettenchingii is the wrong species. It's Umbraticola Sparkler, and it has really curly, wiry foliage. Beautiful thing. Well, this is the true Ophiopogon chingii. And this is from Vietnam, where I was with an Ophiopogon expert. That was he was a botanist, taxonomist, and Ophiopogon was his main thing. Ophiopogon chingii makes a stem about so tall, a single stem with these curly Ophiopogon leaves on it. Every one I've ever seen is a little clump of grass-like thing. This has a stalk. Then we passed one, Ophiopogon latifolius, which was 3 feet tall with leaves on it, just a single thing. So, did you get that, chingii? Completely blew my mind. I had no idea these caulescent or stemmed mondo grasses existed. So, again, is it hardy? Who knows? We're growing it out. We actually have one planted out in a test bed. We'll see if it survives. I have my doubts. Is it a great landscape plant? No. Is it a weird landscape plant for weird people? Yes. So I like it. If it winds up not being hardy, we may keep one to play around with in the greenhouse, but we don't have all the room in the world. But we will definitely be sending it to botanic gardens and the weird plant nursery folks down farther south and on the West Coast. So that brings us to this plant, which you may look at and say, oh, well, that's an aspidistra, right? That's a cast iron plant. No, this is a plant that I only learned about, maybe 5-8 years ago. We don't have a species on this. This we collected in Vietnam as well. This is Peleosanthes. Peleosanthes, which if I'd done my homework, I'd be able to tell you what that meant. I have not done my homework. So Peleosanthes are closely related to Ophiopogon. There's actually an Ophiopogon that we collected that's called Ophiopogon peleosanthoides, which has leaves that look like a stalk and then they get wide, but not quite as wide as this and not quite as stalked as this, but it's in between. And the difference is in how they flower and things like that. And this one will flower down near the base with beautiful little pinkish purplish flower stalk. You'd have to get on your hands and knees to look at it. Again, hardiness, we'll see. We don't know. They just haven't been trialed outside very much. So we have a piece of this one planted outside as well. We'll see how it does. We won't give up on it if it dies. If it dies, what we'll do is we'll grow this to a much larger, chunkier size and plant it out to give it a little bit more of a chance of surviving. But the reason these are exciting to me is because I'm just figuring out how many just Ophiopogon there are out there. There are hundreds of these species, I'm certain of them, and we're discovering new ones all the time. And a lot of folks a lot of my colleagues who go collect in the wild, we've gotten in the habit of when we see an Ophiopogon, grab some fruit to bring back. These are clumping plants. They don't run around, and we're finding as they come into flower that they're just incredibly different. There's an Ophiopogon that I just noticed in flower the first time last year in our garden that we've grown for quite a while. And it is beautiful with purple flowers with these long kind of spikelets around at each flower on this cluster that arches out. There's really just a lot of fun stuff still to discover. We're at Arboretum. We focus on the trees and shrubs, but it's always fun to play with these other things. Got to have something under those trees and shrubs, right? So we play with the mushy plants as well.
The mushy plants. I love it. Well, Mark, we got a few questions, some even related to the mushy plants.
All right.
And their mushiness. So we'll start with that one. So Sandy says that she has a beautiful hardy gloxinia that she got from the JCRA, but it took a hit with one of the earlier freezes. She says it's only been in the ground for a year. Do you think it'll come back?
Does she know which one it was?
Sandy, I will ask you if you know which one that was, and you can drop it in the chat. Potentially, maybe.
Even if you just get close to the name. I can, let me go back. So we've distributed several. And so hardy gloxinia covers a lot of territory. There's one that we distributed, Sinningia eumorpha, EUMORPHA, that we didn't think was going to be hardy. I got seed in it, and we sowed it, and everyone germinated, and we had a gazillion of them. And we distributed them, and then I planted a few at my house. We planted some out here, and they came back the next year, which blew our minds because we didn't think this thing was going to be hardy at all. And then it came back again, and it came back again. I lost mine 2 winters ago. It did not come back, and ours here have kind of dwindled. They've come back, but they haven't gotten more robust over time. They've gotten less. And if it was that Sinningia eumorpha, I have a feeling that early freeze, if it knocked it back really early, a good chance that it killed it. Some of the other ones, some of the other Sinningias, the taller ones with the long tubular flowers, those should be fine.
Yeah, I've noticed that with the earlier freeze that we had, it wasn't ever really a bad freeze, but at the time that it happened, I noticed there was a hellebore that had stalks up that didn't get burned particularly, and then the newer stalks, those got hit pretty hard. So it seems that everything that did get hit by that freeze just didn't develop enough cold hardiness by getting exposed to cold. So if it got killed by the freeze that happened this fall, I'd second that notion that it probably isn't going to come back.
Yeah.
And she didn't say which one it is, but I think that was a fair enough answer to cover all that. Okie dokie. Oh, here it goes. She says she went out to garden and grabbed the tag. It was Bolivian sunset, Seemannia sylvatica.
So that's a marginal one. And we're not really entirely sure how it's going to perform. Mine has died back. I was actually out there just the other day poking around, and I could see where it was still alive down at the crown, below the mulch, and we'll see. But I don't, that's one that Bolivian sunset were not, it was not one that had been trialed here before we distributed it, which happens a lot. We get plants, we get excited, we get them out to people. And then we ask them how they grew.
Hey, we're all learning.
Exactly.
All good stuff. Okay, so Marilyn wants to know if the Raphiocarpus, if that takes sun or shade.
Shade.
Shade, for sure. And earlier you made a comment, if Marilyn is listening, and she was in fact listening, she says that the deer pretty much leave her rhododendrons alone, incidentally, but that is because there are huge azaleas planted nearby that they much prefer.
Okay, yeah. I have a bunch of these yak rhododendrons and hybrids, and I have not seen one flower on them because I'm always like, well, maybe I should spray them with liquid fence or do something with them, and I never do. And then there's no closing the barn door after the horse is bolted. I come out and every flower bud has been eaten off of every single one.
These things happen.
These things happen.
Okie dokie. So Kate wants to know hardiness zones for the Berberis sessiliflora.
The Berber subsessiliflora. Those are going to be hardy to at least zone 6, maybe hardier. Some of these are real cold tolerant, and I just don't know for sure. But zone 6 for sure.
Yeah, and it was a really cute plant, so I feel like it's worth trying regardless.
Yeah, and most of those barberries we're growing from seed, so we will have we have a fair number of those. We'll have extras to get out to people.
Okie dokie. So Rich wants to know if the Jerusalem sage is edible.
No. Well,
is that all Jerusalem sages or this particular?
Let me back up.
Yeah.
Go to everything's edible.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would hurt you to eat it. I don't think it would be very pleasant to eat. It's fuzzy and evergreen, and it is not a sage. It's not salvia. So I would say you wouldn't want to eat it.
Yeah, and I would just be curious, like how you would even use it culinarily, because like the smell, to me, it kind of smells like a cinnamon donut, which is nice, but like how do you implement that as a spice? It's just, I don't know. I don't know. But that appears to be all of the questions that we had in the chat today. So.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Mark, for pulling this all together. It was wonderful to see all these plants and how excited you get about them.
I am. This is good stuff. I could do this 5 times over after walking through the greenhouses. We got so much good stuff in the greenhouses that are just waiting for homes in the garden and in people's hands. It's a lot of fun stuff.
No kidding, absolutely. And thank you everybody for joining us today. We will be back next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We will be doing how to build your own mist system at home. We've got that pre-recorded for you. We are all ready to show it for you. So be here next Wednesday at 3 o'clock for that program. We look forward to seeing you all then. Y'all take care.